Hi, welcome to Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Robert Green, and joining me today is Sam Bazoo. Hey, Sam. Welcome
Howdy,
back on the
howdy.
show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. A long time.
Yes.
Today, we're going to talk about modern .NET developer productivity. It is the greatest time to be a .NET developer since the last time it was the greatest time to be a .NET developer, which is the greatest time since the greatest time before that. It is always a great time to be a .NET developer because it just keeps getting better.
It does. No, I think Robert, you and me can speak to this a little bit because we're both old, and I remember the times.
You're only as old as you act, buddy.
That's true. And it's just a number, but I remember VB6 days. I remember the
Mhm.
early days of .NET framework, and I mean here we are, 20 years later, and everything around the ecosystem is just so nice. So yes,
Yeah,
it's a really good time.
crazy. It's crazy how many tools there are to make it easy or straightforward to do the things that we used to have to slog through.
Absolutely. So let's dive in and see what all of this means for us. So, like
Okay.
Robert said, I'm Sam. I am a developer advocate at Progress Software. Maybe you've heard of some of the things we do to make developers a little bit more, productive. We make UI components for, web, desktop, and mobile. We make productivity suites, but a lot of it is on .NET, and I'm excited about all things .NET. So, let's talk about the .NET ecosystem, and we'll look at what .NET is, what are some of the tools of our trade, where .NET gets to be very portable, what are some things we can build with it, how do we build it, and how do we deploy it, and then we can talk about the platform reach, which is a big part of what developers do with .NET, and we'll look at some of the flexibility that brings in, with modern .NET. So let's dive in. So these may be slides you may have seen from Microsoft before. This is modern.NET, and it is a really good place to be, like Robert and me have been saying. It is open source, it's modular, it's cross-platform. You can build any type of apps with modern.NET, cloud to web to IoT to AI, you name it. The tools of our trade have come a long way. It's not stuck on a certain operating system. You can use any type of Visual Studio. And again, the overall ecosystem with all of your extensions and NuGet packages and component libraries, it's really, really nice for developers to be productive. So, that's modern.NET in a nutshell. We are, as we speak, we are looking at .NET 8, which is something that's production ready right now. Every November.
Released at the .NET Conf.
Absolutely. Every November, we get .NET Conf, and we get a brand new, .NET. This one here, .NET 8, also carries the LTS, long-term support badge. So it gives enterprises just a little bit more incentive to, upgrade their apps and, move things forward. So it's a pretty good place to be in .NET. Now, again, some numbers coming out of .NET Conf. These were shared. A lot of usage, and the momentum that .NET has right now, it's undeniable. I mean, in terms of open source project popularity, in terms of admired frameworks on forums, it's really getting up there. So again, really good place to be. Let's talk about our tools here. Again, these are the bread and butter for .NET developers. Visual Studio, it is one heck of an IDE. It is so rich, so complex, and so powerful. But again, it can be very lightweight as well. If you are just doing one type of app, then you get your one type of workload and off you go. But this is Visual Studio, mostly on Windows. And we'll talk about the Mac and Linux side in a second, but you have so much of tools built right inside of Visual Studio. The debugger is exceptional. The IntelliSense, all of the AI-powered tooling that you have, and it's not just code. You can also do testing. You can do version control. You can collaborate with your team members. Design things, deploy things, all from inside of Visual Studio. So it's a really good place to be. It's an evolution of an IDE that is like 15 years old now. So if we look at the other side, because again, not everybody wants to code the same way, especially younger audiences love the lightweightness of being having a tiny MacBook Air or a tiny Windows PC and being able to code .NET. So that's what this is for. VS Code, Visual Studio Code. Again, it's amazing how far this has come. Like I remember the Microsoft Build conference where this was first announced like years back, and here we are. It's just such a powerful but yet lightweight code editor, and this really is cross-platform, so it works the same way on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it enjoys a very, very rich ecosystem. Everything is an extension, so you get what you need, and no more and no less. And
with
it's
the
the
new
same
C#
experience.
dev kit stuff that was just introduced, it's even more powerful. We'll be doing episodes on that shortly.
Yeah. So .NET developers, we had all of the things in VS Code to be productive, but this is kind of kicking things up a notch, getting things from Microsoft that are trusted. So speaking about that, let's kind of dive into this. So folks asked, like, what are these two tools? Which one should I use? Well, it depends on you a little bit. If you are mostly on Windows, stick to Visual Studio. It has a full-on community license, or your enterprise might already have an enterprise license with it. And it's a full-blown IDE. So you get a lot of out-of-the-box type things. So let's say you wanted to do cross-platform development with .NET MAUI. You check a box, and everything that you need, it's right there. Visual Studio gets it for you. Or if you would rather build your own technology stack and you kind of know the building blocks, then use VS Code. It's much more lightweight, especially if you're on other platforms other than Windows. And it's a lot of extensions, very rich ecosystem. So kind of choose where you want to be. Yep. And speaking of C# Dev Kit, so this is relatively new, and it's actually really enabling a lot of the .NET comforts that we get used to inside of Visual Studio on VS Code. So your productivity should not take a hit just because you're switching from a full-blown IDE to a lightweight, code editor. It has all of the IntelliSense built in. It has language support. It has some of the, GUI type things that we are so used to in Visual Studio. Some of that productivity is kind of making it inside of VS Code as well. So write C# anywhere. That's the message. And kind of diving into what that includes. Again, some of the AI IntelliSense, some of the C# extensions, the Solution Explorer type experiences that you love in Visual Studio, you can do the same things in VS Code. Plus, if you're building apps for Unity or .NET MAUI, which is cross-platform, you can do them right inside of VS Code as well. So really polished, lightweight code editor that just simply works everywhere. Now, these are the tools. Let's talk about where .NET goes. And I'm kind of excited. I haven't, played with this, off late, but some of the recent changes are making us, kind of take another look. So if you're building microservices, if you're building, web apps, with lots of different components, .NET is particularly well suited for running it in a container. We developers, we love it when our code works, right? And we have this common saying that it works on my machine, so it's ready to ship. But what if your machine was just really big and isolated, and you could invite customers on it? So that's the whole concept of containers. And Docker is ultra popular for all types of container registries and making your app run. .NET actually did in .NET 8 some really good work in trying to minimize how small those .NET containers get, and just how easily you can run .NET on just Windows and Mac, or in a container in the cloud. It's just all .NET. And the runtime can be really chiseled in, and you only get the OS parts that you really need. So it's just a really nice way of running .NET apps going forward. And then we talk about AI, because we cannot take a step these days without talking about AI. It's everywhere, and for good reason. It's everywhere. So much of investment, so much of research, so much of amazing things going on. As long as we tread carefully, as long as we're doing things ethically, this has the potential of changing how we live and work and all those good things. So again, OpenAI is big. A lot of research, a lot of investments that go into the latest models that we see powering experiences like ChatGPT or DALL-E or Bing. You're going to see the same type of experiences on Azure with OpenAI services. You're seeing Copilot kind of being built right into Windows and right inside of Bing and Edge and Visual Studio. So a lot of that is, kind of making its way into normal user lives, as well as developers get to, use AI their way, so that you're writing better code, you're, automating some of the things, and then, if and when possible, you're trying to customize your apps to your users' needs, and, tapping into the, power of AI. So again, a lot of good things happening. .NET really tries to enable developers to tap into AI.
Mm-hmm.
And the ecosystem obviously has always been great. I'm clearly biased because I work for Progress, but there's a lot of help. So we make a product suite called Telerik, which is for all things .NET. We make something called Kendo UI, which is for all things JavaScript. But my point is, don't trust me, but take a look around and choose the right type of UI framework that works for your app. But hopefully you're not reinventing the wheel. There is a lot of UI help out there, and productivity suites that work kind of with .NET everywhere. So that's my spiel on the .NET ecosystem.
Cool. It's a nice overview of where we're at.
Yeah. How about we take a look at some things, and then we'll talk more about desktop. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's get out of here, and I'm going to bring you to my browser. So if you are new to .NET, you can go to .NET, and it's going to take you to this page, and it's just everything about .NET: how you build apps, how you deploy apps, and how you are fast and productive all across, and the tools. It's all right there. So start here, and then Robert and me remembered the days of old .NET frameworks where it was a system-wide installation. Like you had one .NET framework per machine, and your IT had to spend months trying to figure out how to move things forward. Yep. All of those days are gone. Like .NET, the runtime. So .NET can be a platform on which you build your apps, but then when you deploy your apps, it's just a runtime for you to run your apps. And that's just a folder. I mean, you can have any number of .NETs on your machine. I routinely blow away the folder and I re-get the folders. I can package .NET with my apps. So again, it's just very, very portable as to how .NET is and where it goes. Yep. So let's take a look at this. Again, if you are new to this, do a search on .NET 8, which is the latest one. So you can go back in previous versions, and let me bump up my fonts here a little bit. So you can get the SDKs, or you can just get the runtimes. I happen to be on a Mac today. That's an Apple chip, so I will get the ARM64, or you can get the x64 if you're on Intel. On Windows, again, you have all types of different types of binaries fitting different types of OS and chips. So get the .NET that is fit for your machine, and that's how you get started. So speaking about the runtime, I am going to start here with command line, because that's again the consistent thing between all machines. So if I do a .NET version here, what it's telling me, let me know, Robert, if this is big enough to read.
Yeah, make it a little bigger.
Okay, so what it's telling me is, hey, you are running .NET 8, because that happens to be the most latest .NET that I have installed, but I'm not forced to use it. I can go back a little bit. So if I do a .NET, show me all the .NETs I have installed, then it shows me, hey, you got things from .NET 6 and 7 and 8. So we had .NET Framework, we had .NET Core, and .NET 6 onwards, pretty much everything is just .NET. It just includes all of the different types of base class libraries that we have used to. So again, keep an eye out on this. This is just a folder. It's just an SDK. So you can have multiple versions of .NET, and again, you can blow them away. You can package them with your app. So it's a really nice place to be. So if I do a .NET new, show me a list of all the things I can do with .NET. Here, it looks a little, the formatting looks off because the fonts are so much bigger. But here, if I bring things down a notch, you see the huge number of templates that we have. So these are the same templates that you get with .NET if you do a file new project in Visual Studio, or if you have a Visual Studio extension and you just want to open up a .NET solution or start a new .NET. These are the same exact templates that you see. So you can do everything from cross-platform apps, iOS apps, Android apps, all types of ASP.NET apps, different types of desktop apps, Blazor, web apps. So Mac Catalyst for Mac desktop, and then you get into some of the testing solutions and other things with .NET. So it's just a lot. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. Based on the platforms that you're using, based on the things that you are building, you're going to get the right workloads, and you're going to get the right .NET SDKs, and get the right tools to build Azure apps or cross-platform apps or desktop apps and so on. Cool. So it's a good place to be. So let me come back out, and let's kind of start with the basics of where .NET is. So let's see. I'm going to go into a folder here where I like to keep some of my projects, and let's look at a simple .NET Hello World app. Okay. We'll go in here. I think this one has an app inside. So let's go in here, and I'm going to do code dot because I have VS Code as an environment variable in my in my path. So I can just do code dot, and it opens up my solution. So let's look at this for a second. I'm going to go in here and look at which exact project I'm using. That's that. I'm looking at the .NET deploy here. There's my app. I don't need a solution file unless I'm inside of Visual Studio. VS Code is just fine. So that's the app that we're looking at. So let's look at VS Code here. Now this one here is a .NET new console app. So it just by default it just spits out hello world. That's the .NET new experience that you get. But friends don't let friends just type out hello world in the regular font, right? So we want to make things a little bit more fun. So if I look at the CS proj here, this is just as bare bones as it gets. It's an SDK style project. It says, hey, I'm running this on .NET 8. I can use some C# 12 statements, so make things nice and clean. And I'm bringing in a package reference. This is the same as you right-clicking in Visual Studio and getting a NuGet package. So I'm getting one that's called Figgle. And all that it does, it just throws in a little bit of a fancy font. So I can do a Figgle fonts, give me a standard render, and that's how I want to render hello world. Now, I'm also doing a little bit more here. I'm creating a counter, and I am trying to print the time, or the counter count every 1 second, right? So I'll delay it by a second, and then I'm just going to print it. As simple as that. So that's my program.cs, 5 lines of code. Mm-hmm. So let's go in here, and we are just going to do a .NET. And actually, before we do that, let's go back in here. I'm going to show you what it's doing. Like, this is the portability of .NET. So this is our object folder, our release folder. Let's blow things away completely. So we can rebuild these things as we go. So we blew away the object folder. The bin doesn't really matter. So let's do a .NET run. So it's going to try to build and deploy my app, running it locally. Oh, it's complaining about something else, which is a quick fix. So hold on for a second. It's just complaining about a NuGet package that is not set. All right, let's try that again. All right, so I get a hello world in a fancier font as I promised, but you see the counter there, right? It's just going counter 1, 2, 3. Every second it prints out a counter, and it's not going to stop. There is no stop on the for loop until I actually hit Control-C and I bail out of the program. So that's how basic this is. So we are essentially going into this loop, and every second we are printing something out. So this runs locally, absolutely fine, not a problem. But this is where we're going to get into how do I now take this app elsewhere. So the first thing we will do is we'll do a .NET publish. We don't talk about these things a whole lot because there are Visual Studio tools that will do this for you, but it just kind of helps to know what it is. So instead of having me type, I actually have some of the commands. So Robert, this is my cheat sheet, my $1 million cheat sheet of all the command line things that I cannot remember. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to.
There you go.
There you go. So I'm just going to do a .NET publish in a release mode. So I'm just saying, hey, I'm ready. My app works. I'm ready to ship this. So at this point, it's just going to go in here and just do a quick restore. If anything does need a restore, and give me the package that my app has built. So if I go look at this now, this is the object folder that I blew away. If I look at the release now, there is a .NET 8, and this is all the stuff that my app needs to run, right? Standard stuff. And included in there is a DLL, you could get an executable if you wanted to. Now, the other thing you could do is if I go into a .NET Publish, but I say, hell, let's do self-contained, because I am not sure if the person that's going to run my app has .NET or not. So let's do self-contained to true. So at this point, it's going to say, okay, you are asking me to build and restore, but I'm going to do things a little differently. So now if I go back here, you get an OS X ARM64. So this is a folder that you get because I happen to be on OS X, and these are all of the things that .NET needs us to run as well. So now this is self-contained. If I looked at just the published one, that is just meant for running on an OS that has .NET running. If I do a self-contained, then it's going to run on any machine, that does have .NET or doesn't. Right? Makes sense? So the self-contained thing is nice, and you can do this, so it carries with it all of the dependencies. Like you are going to see a DLL for the NuGet package in there. So any type of dependency that you have in your CS project, those dependencies will make it over. And it's only going to get the parts of the .NET that you absolutely need in your project and no more. So you get a kind of a trimmed down version of this. So this is just kind of .NET running on Windows, on Mac, or running self-contained. But let's talk about containers here while we're at this, because you may have kind of seen the name of the project. It says Docker. So we're going to do a little bit of Docker, because something new that's in .NET 8 is really nice. So I'm going to bring up my Docker containers here, which is just it's a runtime daemon that's listening to it. And anybody who needs a Docker container or an image on this machine gets it. So first thing is images. So an image essentially is a list of things that you're asking to be had on a machine on which you're trying to run your app, right? So what OS do I need? What runtime do I need? What IO do I need? How much memory? Or what are some of the artifacts? So you don't need to create these things from scratch. Actually, there are things like container registries, which have a listing of all types of images. And Microsoft publishes a lot of it's called MCR. So it publishes a lot of those container registries, which include the .NET runtime. So we don't have to do anything. We can just grab one of those containers and just go up and running. So if I look at the project here, you will see that I have a file here called Docker file, which is just a text file that says, hey, go look at this registry. I'm building a .NET app with .NET 8. You're going to do a restore. You're going to copy down all of the .NET bits that you need, and then you're going to copy over the artifacts of this build and run it in a container, right? So that's essentially
create the container and load up that app into the container.
Well, not yet. This is just a Docker file, and then we will do, let's actually go in here. So you can do a Docker build and give it, we already have an image. Let's actually create a container here. So if I look at my Docker desktop here, if I look at the containers, there is nothing running right now, right? So what I could do is, let's get up here to the top, and we could do a Docker create. And what it takes is two things. One is the container name of what you wanted to call it. Let's just say counter core. And then it takes the name of the image, which I already built. That was called counter image. And that's going to grab this image that I already have built a day ago, right? So this is going to create a container. And it's just going to come back with a GUID to say, hey, you got a container now. You're not running it, but you asked for a container. So here's the container created right now, but it's not running, right? So the next step would be to actually run the container. And we can do, let's see, a Docker start container name. So let's do I'm showing you the hard way. It helps to know the command lines, but you can also do all of this by GUID or by GUI. So let's go ahead and run this. So at this point, it's saying, hey, I'm running your container that you asked me to run. And now if I go back to counter core, it says, hey, I'm running. So we essentially created an image and we created a container and we said, go run our .NET app in the container. It's running yet. We just haven't, looked at the output, yet. So we can actually attach, and go back into the container. So if we do I think we did a start. So this is the command docker attach is what gets me in there. So if we do a docker attach, and then we got to say the container name, which is counter.core. Now we are kind of getting into the container. So you see the counter here, it's going from 40 because it started when we started the container, we just never tapped into it, right? So if I control C out of it, that sig proxy false essentially says don't stop the container just because you're not looking at it. So if I go back and fire this up again.
Hold on a second. So the app, where's the app running?
The app is running inside the container.
Because you said attach?
The image that we built actually has the published version of the app. So it's running already in the container.
So the image has the app. Then you started the image and now it's running.
It's running, and that's because we did a Docker start. So if we go look at the Docker desktop, this thing is running, right? And I can stop this. So let's actually stop this, and then we can completely blow it away. Because the container is going to sit there and choose through memory. So you could do this, or the other thing you could do is a shortcut that I like is Docker run. So I'm going to grab this here. So I could say Docker run, and what that RM does is just saying, hey, I just need the container as long as I can run my app, and then I don't need it anymore. So the container name was the image name was counter image. All right, so we'll say this. So at this point, you can see there is no container running because we killed it. But with this command, we're just going to spin up a container. So this is kind of like a small VM, but it doesn't need much. So it's just really quick. So we're going to say spin up the app, the container, run our app. So you can see it's going right now. And then when I control C out of it, it bails. And if I come back here, there is no container running. So let's do it again. This is really nice because it spins up the container. If I go back to Docker, there is it just gives it a goofy name. It literally is called Goofy Haslet in this case. It's just a random name. So it's running, and then as soon as I disconnect out of it, it kills the container. Right. So this is really nice, and you can take those containers to Azure, to Kubernetes, anywhere you want to run your .NET. It's going to be right there because it's all dependent on these images that are coming down. Those images come from Microsoft and include the .NET bits that your app needs, right? So this is the portability. Now, there is something that the .NET 8 team did very recently, which was really nice. So let me pull that up. So let's go here. We're going to bail out of this folder, and we're going to open up another app here. Same folder, but this one, we're going to look at the chiseled app. So people have been asking for more and more portability from these containers. So, this was something that was done unofficially for about a year or so, but now it's official. So if you wanted .NET to be running really lean, where your footprint is almost minimal, because if you look at the container that we had, the counter image, just a hello world app with one dependency, that's about 248 megabytes. That's the container size for it to run. So if you wanted it to be even smaller, then this is something that's enabled actually by .NET itself. You don't even need the Docker CLI to do this. If I create a chiseled version, which means this is my app, but I'm turning on a couple of settings here. So publish my app in chiseled mode, and I can choose which container, because by default, it's going to run on any container that runs .NET, but I could choose Ubuntu. So this was some work that the Canonical team did with Microsoft, and the latest Ubuntu runtime is actually called Jammy Jellyfish. So they called it Jammy here as well. So you are essentially choosing a Jammy chiseled, runtime, and you are choosing the Microsoft build containers. So with that, if you do a build, the same exact app, it's going to be now 29 megabytes. And you can actually trim a lot more on this. They were showing off demos where it's down to 10 megabytes. Where, keep in mind, this is not just your app. This is your app and its .NET dependencies and its OS dependencies. So you are using only the amount of Ubuntu that you need to host your app and only the .NET that you need. So this is literally as slim as it gets. So
that's cool.
Yeah, and I think .NET is very, very portable. It just goes to so many places that you can host .NET.
Yep. And
All
then
right.
that container, you can run it in a Windows container. You can run it in a
Anywhere.
Linux container.
Anywhere. Yep. Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to quit on Docker for a second, and let's look at a different app because, again, AI is everywhere, right? So let's switch gears here a little bit. I like some AI. In fact, I already have it open in Visual Studio, so I might do that. So let's do this. So what's your favorite AI tool of choice these days, Robert?
I'm pretty partial to that ChatGPT.
Everyone loves ChatGPT because it can be used for so much
Playing around
evil,
a little bit with GitHub,
but it's so much fun, isn't it? Yes, so that's great too. Let's actually, speaking of that, let me show you this. So if I am in Visual Studio Code, this is the canvas that you get for your lightweight .NET, right? And it's the exact same canvas. Like these are my extensions, right? And there's a whole extensions marketplace. This is my C# dev kit. The thing that I'm missing right now, and I'll show you that in a second. Oh, and by the way, this one is something I really recommend. This is called the material icon theme. So when you open up a solution or a folder in VS Code, all of the files look kind of like blah because it doesn't know what it is. This one will come in here and just give you those little icons as you're used to in Visual Studio. So everything looks exactly the way you want. So in here is also an extension for GitHub Copilot that kind of sits there, learns from your code, learns from any open source, GitHub repo, and it starts suggesting things, which is really, really nice. So I'm going to go in here and actually this VS Code experience that you have, just think about the portability of .NET here as well. I can do vscode.dev, which is the same exact VS Code experience, except now I am in my browser. There are certain limitations, like you cannot do like terminal, because this is actually not being hosted anywhere. It's just literally in a browser. But I have the same extensions right in here in a browser, and I can edit my C# code. If I was, in a pinch, I just wanted to get access to my code that's sitting somewhere, I can just do this in a browser.
Okay.
And speaking of GitHub, you may have also heard about the other thing that GitHub does really well and Microsoft does really well. It's called Codespaces. So let me go in here to a public repo, and I can pull down code. Like I can clone the repo, I can pull it down with GitHub desktop. I could download that on a zip, or think about it this where you have a team lead and you are working on a complex project with lots of projects in a solution, and you have lots of moving parts. You want a place where everything is set up for a new developer to come in and just start being productive. That's Codespaces essentially.
Can you bump up the?
Yeah, so I can go to any GitHub repo, or I can spin up a blank project, but I can just create a good GitHub code space out of it. So what this is doing is taking my code that is sitting in a GitHub repo, and it's opening up VS Code right there. Now this is not just in your browser. You can kind of see like it's opening a remote connection, right here in the corner. If I zoom in a little bit, see that it's opening a remote connection. It's actually creating whatever I need. So you can see that it's saying, hey, your project could use C# dev kit. You don't have it installed because this is a separate machine that you're on, essentially. So you essentially get VS Code that is running with your project and your code exactly as you want, and you can get this set up with all of the tools and all of the extensions and just be productive. And then you can save your state and go away. And this is the same concept if you look at let's see if I can pull this up. DevBox, same idea. Or maybe just done a little differently. This is more for enterprises and IT admins. This is DevBox, which is essentially a VM in the cloud with VS Code or Visual Studio running exactly the way you want, with your code and your .NET naming conventions, whatever you need as a team. Maybe you're doing Maui, maybe you're doing Blazor, maybe you're doing Azure. Everything that you need can be set up, and then you just join to this VM and you're up and running. So the same idea here with Codespaces. This is something you're connecting to. It's not running locally, so you can run more processes. You can do terminal. It is a different view of your code running on a different machine. So a lot of flexibility with .NET these days. But the thing that everyone talks about is GPT and OpenAI, because it's so powerful. So OpenAI is a research company that does a lot of the models and a lot of the AI work that we love and hate these days. ChatGPT is very powerful, and all of that is accessible to you as a developer if you just want to tap into some of the power of AI and just try to sprinkle in a little bit of customization for your users, make your apps a little smarter. All of that is, all of the knowledge and power of humanity is behind a RESTful API. Or, right. Azure has a Azure OpenAI service, which will do the models, it'll do the training for you. You can bring your own data sets, and then it learns and starts getting smarter on the decisions that you want to make. So again, anybody could sign up for an account, and then you get access to an open API endpoint, and you can have some API keys that you work with. So let me show you an example here how simple it is. So this one here, I just happen to have it open in Visual Studio, which is I can open the same project in Visual Studio Code as well. This one here is a .NET MAUI app, so it's cross-platform by design. So I have all of these .NETs. I can run this on iOS, Android, so mobile is covered. I can run this on Windows and Mac, so desktop is covered, and I can also do Tizen. So a lot of different platforms where this thing can run. So all of those essentially are folders compared to like the Xamarin way. Now it's just a folder, so I can share a lot more things. So things like my fonts, my app icons, my splash screens, my styles, all of those things are now shared across all platforms, which is a really good place to be. So let's just say, Robert and me are good friends. We are planning a trip, a vacation just by ourselves, right? So let's go ahead and start running this app here. So it's going to do a build, and it's going to start with the Mac version, and you can deploy the same exact app. Yeah, I can zoom in. Hold on. Actually, let me bump up my fonts overall, so I don't have to keep doing that. So let's do that. So it's a desktop app here, and it's just saying, hey, you're trying to go to a trip. Let's go to the most exciting city in the world. That's Cleveland, Ohio, which is my nearest airport.
I want to go to Cleveland. I want to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It
is a nice city.
Ballpark there. Yeah. Lots of stuff to do in Cleveland.
So you're trying to figure out what's to do in Cleveland. Where can you stay? So behind the scenes, it takes a couple of seconds here. We are making a couple of calls out to ChatGPT, and I'll show you the code. And just 3 lines of code is what you need to bring in an AI assistant. So it comes back to say, hey, these are some attractions in Cleveland. The first thing that you want, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Cleveland Museum of Art, all of those things. So this is almost having a conversation with ChatGPT.
Left out the ballpark, though.
Yeah, left out the ballpark. So maybe that's something you can train ChatGPT on. Yeah, and then a couple of hotels that I asked for, and then I can choose our dates, and off we go. So this is just obviously just a hello world type application, just to kind of show you how easy it is to tap into an AI assistant here. So what I have here is just one dependency, and there are actually a couple of NuGet packages you can use here. So I am using something called ChatGPT NET, but there are also a few other ones if you wanted to. So just that one NuGet package is all I need. So now we come in here. The UI for this is pretty simple. I got a couple of labels. When you click on that button, I essentially have an event handler that fires off. So we are going to start up our GPT client, initialize it, and bring it in. That way it gets a particular GUID. Then I have my API keys already lined up in here. So when you say get me the attractions, it just essentially the API keys, by the way, are in here. Where it's just a little bit of configuration to say use this model. The models are also like, are you creating images? Then you might want to use like a DAL-E model, or in this case you can use GPT-3 or GPT-4 and certain other things you might need. So you bring those in. This can either go to OpenAI or it can go to Azure OpenAI service. Once you have that, it's just a few lines of code, and it's all .NET. So I make sure that you actually have a city. And then we make one call, ChatGPT response. We ask asynchronously, what are some attractions in that city? That's it. So it's essentially as if you're just doing, ChatGPT in your browser or in the app to say, what is it? And then we get the response back and we stick the whole thing in. This one here, we're asking, what are some hotels in Cleveland in this case? So you can, type in whatever you want. You can have, customized suggestions for whatever you're doing, but all of the power of OpenAI and ChatGPT, all of these AI models are very complex if you need to get into the math of it, like the neural networks that it takes to come up with these answers. But again, if you just want to use it, it's just really simple for you to just tap into this.
That is cool.
Yeah. All right. So just a quick look at what .NET, present-day .NET is, right? It is an open source platform for you to build cross-platform apps. It's for you to build web apps and desktop apps and mobile apps and cloud apps, container apps, like we talked about with Docker or the chiseled containers. Those are really nice in terms of portability. So it's a modern framework that lets you build for just about every platform. The tools of the trade have come a long way. So again, start with .NET. There is no barrier to entry. It's a good place to be. It's very friendly. Ecosystems are rich. And then you get into some of the platform things that .NET can target. The big ones that I'm a fan of are .NET MAUI, which is multi-platform app for mobile and desktop apps, and then Blazor, which is for all things web, either completely client-side or a mix of client-side and server-side, or maybe completely server-side. So again, with these two things, you are targeting a huge plethora of apps that people run, be it on the web or be it on mobile or desktop. And you got all of the tools, be on Windows, be on Mac or Linux, use Visual Studio or VS Code, and all of the intelligence and all of the extensions are there for you to be more productive.
Great. That's fantastic.
So yeah, just a high-level overview. We can dive more into the platforms.
Lots of coolness. All right. So thanks so much for coming on and doing that. Really appreciate that.
So folks, go do .NET. There's nothing stopping you.
Absolutely. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and we will see you next time on Visual Studio Toolbox.